The first time Rowan Hale saw her life collapsing, it didn't come with thunder, sirens, or some dramatic shattering of glass. It arrived quietly, like a cold wind slipping beneath a locked door, chilling her bones before she even realized she was freezing. That morning, sunlight flooded the upper floors of the Hale Corporation's headquarters, turning the glass walls into mirrors of gold. Everything looked successful from the outside. Everything looked stable. But Rowan knew that inside, betrayal was spreading like smoke, thick and poisonous. Her own family was moving against her, not slowly, not secretly, but with a ruthless determination she never imagined they were capable of. And the moment she stepped onto the rooftop balcony, reading the anonymous threat delivered to her email, she felt it: her life was no longer safe. Her position. Her freedom. Even her heartbeat. All of it was suddenly under attack. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories where broken people learn to stand again, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Chronicles. Your support turns simple stories into strength for someone who needs it. Rowan had always been the quiet force behind her father's legacy, the daughter who rarely spoke but always delivered. After her father's passing, she became the CEO, young, brilliant, disciplined, and determined to steer the company toward ethical growth. Her cousins wanted none of that. They wanted fast money and power, and when they couldn't get it, they came for her instead. The more she resisted, the more aggressive they became. The threats started small, then grew sharper, darker, bolder. One message warned her not to show up at the next board meeting. Another hinted they knew where she lived. And the latest one promised she would lose everything, starting with her breath. That was when the company forced her to hire private protection. She didn't argue. Something deep inside her had already accepted that this battle would not be fought in conference rooms or courtrooms. It would be fought in shadows, behind tinted car windows, at the edges of phone calls, and outside her office doors. Enter Caden Mercer. Former Navy SEAL. Single father. A man who walked like someone who had survived both the battlefield and heartbreak. Broad-shouldered, sharply focused, and carrying an aura of quiet authority, he was the kind of person the world didn't notice until it needed saving. He arrived at her office during the brightest hour of the day, sunlight reflecting off the polished floor, creating a halo around him as he stood inside the doorway. Everything about him suggested discipline: clean lines, steady posture, and eyes that scanned the room within seconds. But there was something softer hidden beneath, something wounded yet alive. As calmly as if he were reading a grocery list, he assessed the situation, reviewed her threats, and walked through her daily schedule with military precision. Rowan expected him to be cold. She expected him to be stern. Instead, he surprised her. He listened. Truly listened. To her fear. To her confusion. To the exhaustion she tried so hard to hide. It was the first time in months someone treated her as a human being instead of a title to overthrow. Caden had secrets too, one she didn't ask about but sensed in the gentle way he checked her surroundings, or how he kept adjusting his phone in case the school called about his 8-year-old son, Lucas. Life had clearly tested him, sharpened him, and left scratches that he carried with quiet dignity. But he never complained. He just stood there at every corner, every elevator, every hallway, solid, present, and unshakable. As days passed, Rowan realized that danger wasn't lurking anymore, it was advancing. One afternoon, while the city glowed under a warm daylight sky, Caden spotted a suspicious car tailing them for 3 blocks. He remained calm, directed the driver down a different route, and kept Rowan leaning low until the car finally disappeared. Another time, someone tampered with the locks at her penthouse. Another time, a file went missing from her office, containing critical company data. Every incident chipped away at her stability. Every betrayal twisted her trust further, but every time she faltered, Caden was there. He didn't ask intrusive questions. He didn't push her to share more than she wanted. He simply stayed close and said, in his steady presence if not his words, "Try me. Trust me. You don't have to fight this alone." Rowan slowly learned to breathe differently around him. More deeply. More freely. One late afternoon, after another threat surfaced, she found herself sitting in the empty staff garden behind the building, lush green pathways glowing softly under the mild sun. She felt fragile, as if her strength had been cracked in too many places. Caden stayed standing a few steps behind her, giving her space while still protecting her. It was in that quiet moment that she realized she wasn't just afraid of her family anymore. She was afraid of breaking beyond repair. Her voice was barely audible when she said, not to him but to the air, that she didn't know how much more she could take. Caden didn't move closer. He didn't touch her. He only spoke in that calm, grounding tone that made even chaos slow its pace. He told her that strength wasn't measured in how much someone could carry, it was measured in how many times they stood up when carrying became too heavy. His words landed somewhere deep in her chest, settling in the spaces where pain had been growing. Over the coming weeks, their lives intertwined in ways neither expected. Rowan witnessed the gentle side of him when Lucas dropped by one afternoon with a drawing he made for his dad. She watched Caden's whole face soften as the boy ran into his arms. Lucas had bright curiosity in his eyes and a shy smile, and he quickly gravitated toward Rowan, asking her questions about her office, the plants on her balcony, and whether she had any fun parts in her job. Rowan found herself laughing, really laughing. For the first time in months, Caden watched her with a quiet smile, as if he enjoyed seeing the weight lift off her shoulders even for a moment. But danger wasn't done with her. One morning, a major shareholder, once her father's closest friend, was suddenly convinced she was tampering with financial reports. It was an accusation planted carefully by her cousins, and they were preparing to force a board vote to remove her entirely. Rowan felt the walls closing in, her career slipping through her fingers. She spent the entire afternoon preparing evidence to defend herself, her hands trembling from exhaustion and fear. Caden stayed outside her office, intercepting suspicious calls, checking security feeds, and ensuring no one disturbed her. His presence warmed the coldness of the moment, yet just as Rowan finished gathering the last document, the office lights flickered. Power outage. Emergency lights kicked in. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Too heavy. Too deliberate. Not employees. Not accidental. Caden reacted instantly. He stepped into her office, placed himself between her and the door, and listened to the approaching steps with eyes sharpened like steel. When he told her to stay low, Rowan realized danger was no longer a concept. It was outside her door. Coming for her, the next seconds felt endless. The door handle moved slightly. The shadows shifted. Caden's voice remained steady, promising her he would not let anything happen. The intruders eventually retreated, spooked by security reinforcements arriving on the lower floors. But the message was clear: her family wasn't just threatening her, they were willing to destroy her life physically if it meant taking what they wanted. That night, Rowan didn't go home. Caden arranged for a secure safe house during the bright hours of the afternoon, making sure everything was visible and trustworthy. The place was simple: white walls, soft sunlight pouring through tall windows, and a faint smell of clean linen. Rowan felt strangely peaceful there. Maybe it was because the space was quiet. Maybe it was because she wasn't alone. Over the next 2 days, Rowan prepared for the board meeting that would define her entire future. Caden monitored every detail of her security. Lucas called every evening, telling Caden about school projects, and sometimes Rowan listened in, smiling softly. And then the day arrived. The boardroom was bathed in daylight as she walked in with her evidence. Her cousin smirked, confident she'd crumble under pressure. But she didn't. She stood tall, voice steady, documents presented with precision. Every lie they spread, she dismantled. Every trap they set, she disarmed. She defended her father's legacy with everything she had left, and outside the boardroom doors, Caden waited, hands folded behind his back, posture strong, gaze unbreakable, silently protecting her until the very end. When the vote came, Rowan won, her cousins were removed. The threats ceased. And for the first time in months, Rowan could breathe without fear. She walked out of the boardroom into the daylight-filled hallway, eyes misty, shoulders trembling from the weight finally lifting. Caden looked at her with a quiet, reassuring expression, the kind that said he had never doubted her. Rowan felt her heart expand in a way she didn't expect. Not all saviors wore uniforms. Some simply showed up when the world turned dark and said, "Try me." If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to Kindness Chronicles. Your support helps bring more emotional, inspiring stories to life.